What's up, guys? Static in the Attic. Africa is a really hard continent to get any information out of. So let's just start with Herodotus on North Africa. On the country of the Nasamonians borders that of the Scilly, who were swept away under the following circumstances. The south wind had blown for a long time and dried up all the tanks in which their water was stored. Now the whole region within the citrus is utterly devoid of springs. According to the Scilly, took counsel among themselves, and by common consent made war upon the south wind. They went forth and reached the desert, but there the south wind rose and buried them under heaps of sand, whereupon the Scilly being destroyed, their lands passed to the Nasamonians. That's Herodotus in allegedly 500 BC, making it very clear that the place turned into a desert really quickly and wiped people out. This isn't processes that take millennia like they try to tell us. And it's worth noting that Herodotus is one of a handful of Greek writers. He allegedly lived in 500 BC, and ancient Greece is said to have lasted from the 9th century BC all the way up to AD 600. And we've only got a handful of people that have surviving accounts of this time frame. And this time period of ancient Greece and ancient Rome just happened to follow after the Greek Dark Ages. And the Greek Dark Ages were just after the fall of the entire Mycenaean culture that lived there before the ancient Greece. And then they were after the fall of the ancient Minoan culture that lived there before them. How do we know this? Because it's all in the archaeological layers. They're finding layers of different societies. I'll get more into stratigraphy, which is the study of the different layers of strata, in a future video. But look at what even Wiki says about the Mycenaean Greek culture is the destruction of settlements and the collapse of the socio-economic system. So they found the ruins of the society before them, just like we find the ruins of the ancient Romans and the Mycenaeans underneath that layer. Now, I've read part of Plato's quote many times on here, but I want to read the whole thing. It's kind of long, but it's worth it. I'll at least try to throw some good images in. So this is Plato talking to the Egyptians. O Solon, Solon, you Hellenes, you Greeks, are but children. There is no old doctrine handed down among you by ancient tradition, nor any science which is hoary with age, and I will tell you the reason behind this. There have been and will be again many destructions of mankind arising out of many causes, the greatest having been brought about by earth fire and inundation. Whatever happened either in your country or ours or in any other country of which we are informed, any action which is noble and great or in any other way remarkable which has taken place, all that has been inscribed long ago in our temple records, whereas you and other nations did not keep imperishable records. And then, after a period of time, the usual inundations visit like a pestilence and leaves only those of you who are destitute of letters and education. And thus you have to begin over again as children and know nothing of what happened in the ancient times, either among us or among yourselves. As for those genealogies of yours which you have related to us, they are no better than tales of children. For in the first place, you remember one deluge only, whereas there are a number of them. And in the next place, there dwelt in your land, which you do not know, the fairest and noblest race of men that have ever lived, in which you are but a seed or remnant. And this was not known to you because for many generations the survivors of that destruction made no records. So to finish that thought out, this is what the Egyptians were telling Plato a few hundred years after the Greek Dark Ages. And then there was the time of the ancient Greeks, the antiquity, everything that we call ancient, which fell straight into our Dark Ages and the Middle Ages. And the way I got it figured is the real time between 1 AD and 5 AD is the story that we get all mixed up for 10 AD to 15 AD. It's an amalgamation of the two. I don't want to get too deep into that here, but you can definitely see the pattern. Greek Dark Ages, society. Our Dark Ages, society. And to the Egyptians, he was saying that we are but children, only remembering one deluge, where there have been many. Okay, so Africa. To the ancient Greeks and to the ancient Romans, Africa would have meant modern day Tunisia. If you've ever heard of the Battle of Carthage and Hannibal at the gates, Hannibal crossing the Alps, that was actually the Africans coming up and around the north end of Italy and coming down and attacking. It was truly legendary. So, straight across from Sicily, so ancient Sicilia, I'm so mixed up on names now because I know 3 different time frames of everything. That is who they interacted with the most. I mean, it's pretty obvious that Egypt is 2,000 miles over to the east. So thinking that everybody across Africa is the same culture is like, they try to say everything is Roman, but it's just like there may be a building in New York City that is similar to one that, they make copied off of it and made it in LA, but that doesn't make everybody New Yorkers. When we see images like this, our brain thinks Roman because that's what we were taught to ring the bell and salivate to. We see the triumphal arc, or at least that's what they tell us it is, and basically anything that's old is Roman because all of our history is from the Romans. That Rome is still in charge. Well, it'd be more accurate to say that the Romans, the Holy Roman Empire, were the superpower that took over, but now we're caught in between a war with them, the society, and the free bricklayers and the Ashkenazi money. Anyway, we are not looking at Rome. We are looking at North Africa because just like a building in LA resembling a building in New York, it was the same in ancient times. If you saw something in another country, you drew a picture of it, you went home and you built it. This area of modern day Tunisia or Tunis or the ancient city of Carthage, it's all the same thing. They like to change things up. But you can see it's directly across from Sicily, right across from Italy. So these guys were a superpower that rivaled the Roman Empire back in the day. At that time, it would have been the Roman Republic and not the emperors in the coast to coast empire they claim. If you've ever heard of the Punic Wars, yet another name out of nowhere for all of this, the Punic Wars were for control of the Mediterranean, and most of the fighting took place around the island of Sicily. Because if you control that point and you control the island of Sicily, then you control all trade that goes through there and you become very rich. But just like today, that's one group of people that was getting all the money, the ancient Phoenicians that ran the city ports and ran the armies. You can see here that still to this day, they have a very diverse ethnic background. Unfortunately, this is the way things have been for a very long time. The rich and powerful with armies will come in and take the places that they want. And then they bring in people of other ethnicities that are already loyal to their cause, bought and paid for, and in some cases will literally breed people out of history. Anyway, the Tunisians, the ancient Phoenicians that controlled this area, built themselves a star fort at the mouth of the river leading to the city. I know some people are really into these. Me, it looks cool, and yes, it would be very hard to attack. They're not all symmetrical. This one is, but like this other one isn't symmetrical. I mean, I've heard some people say that these are representations of sound frequencies, and to me, the way I look at it is that would be very hard to attack. And if you ever attacked one, then you'd probably tell one of your generals to make a little scribble of that because you want one yourself when you get home. These don't have the high walls that a lot of them do, but that makes a lot of sense with incoming catapult or cannon fire because, a glancing strike isn't as bad as a head on. And I think a big part of it is that, Disney did a good job of making everybody think that rich people in the old days lived in these fairy tale castles when no, they wanted to be protected. They didn't have the National Guard and the U.S. Army at their disposal, so they had them right there where they couldn't be gotten to. Anyway, I'm just going to show you guys some of the architecture and art from North Africa, Tunisia here while I go over a couple things because, yeah, this Roman quote unquote Colosseum is North Africa. This place is famous for the three Punic Wars and ultimately the siege of Carthage. The story goes that Carthage was the superpower of the area, and this is this is regarded as the longest and most severely contested war in history, according to Polybius. The first conflict lasted a total of 23 years, and by the terms of the peace treaty, Carthage paid large war reparations to Rome, and Rome taking control of Sicily, becoming the superpower of the Mediterranean. The Second Punic War was the Carthaginians attacking the Italians again, and then ultimately the third one was the siege of Carthage. And it is said that in 146 BC, the Romans stormed the city of Carthage, sacked it, slaughtered most of the population, and completely demolished it. Now, you'll find that every single city around the Mediterranean in official history was destroyed sometime between about 200 BC and 500 AD. I guess the Spaniards coming to America and demolishing all of South America was just paying homage to the ancient Roman practice of destroying cities, whole cities. And I just want to say real quick on this fresco, I have found several times them depicting angels with wings with bird legs, chicken legs like this. I might even say that this was the norm for this time period to depict angels like this. I've seen it that many times. Anyway, so the thing about the Punic Wars is the main source for almost every aspect of the Punic Wars is the historian Polybius, circa 200 to 100 BC. So this one Greek dude gives us the whole history of the Punic Wars, and that's pretty much all we got for North Africa. Now, why would you lie about such a thing? Well, because there is a destroyed city there, so you can take credit for that and instill fear in your enemies that this will happen to you next. Now, a little more about the artwork is they say that conquering armies destroyed all of the statues because they just hated these people so much and they had to make way for the new ruler, but whatever happened, what did this horse do to anybody? Why'd they bust that up? I mean, everything is found completely smashed. And of course, this is a baptismal, as to where when I look at this, I see a hot tub for 4 people. Now, you know how historians make everything ceremonial, and they would probably attribute this to Dionysius, the god of wine, when I see a 4-person hot tub where people enjoy kicking back with a glass of wine. Do you really think people were that much different back then? And this to me just looks like the seafood menu at a restaurant. Why can't anything just be practical? Just like this one means take your grubby sandals off before you walk on my new mosaic floor that I just paid 50 pounds of gold for. And you can see how this got covered up with all those pesky cultural layer rocks that always show up in your backyard. And better yet, your kitchen floor. So the Romans supposedly destroyed Carthage. Let me tell you this story about a city named Timgad in neighboring Algeria. And just look at this, just pristine sitting here, fresh excavated back in 1965. No one believed the first 18th century European explorer who claimed to have found a Roman city poking out of the sand in the North African desert, and the full extent of the 50-hectare site wouldn't be realized and excavated in its entirety until the 1950s. Among other things, they found the remains of 14 bathhouses and a library where they say that the shelves can still be seen standing in the midst of the town ruins today. A UNESCO World Heritage Site and monument protects it, coincidentally. This place was completely forgotten to history until 1765. A Scottish explorer, James Bruce, found it and called it a small town but full of elegant buildings. Clearing away the sand with his bare hands, Bruce and his fellow travelers uncovered several sculptures of Emperor Antonius Pius, I'm sure. But unable to take any photographs, they just buried it back in the sand. And it says that he went on to find the source of the Blue Nile. He is a couple thousand miles west of the Nile here. So that's, I'm going to say, for another video, because There are old maps showing that the Nile went south and then east over to a place called Atlas Mons. But all the statues, everything he found was too big to take with him on his adventure. So when he got back to Britain, he was met with a lot of skepticism of it ever being there. And he was offended by this, retired, and it remained a lost city for another 100 years till it was rediscovered. Then finally, French colonists took control of the site in 1881 and began a large-scale excavation. Guys, France has control of all of the archaeological sites around the world. I was reading the other day about Iran, and they've had control over Iran's archaeological digs since 1991, I believe it was. So the society universities are the ones that always control the narrative whenever there's a new discovery, and it doesn't come to the public eye until they've had plenty of time to go through and make sure that everything fits with their story. I wanted to point out here that this is an ancient buried city out on the edge of the Sahara that no one knew about, and they had running water and toilets. I'm not going to dig around for the map right now, but there was a map that showed aqueducts going through the Sahara. Here you can see some of the ancient aqueducts going through modern day Tunisia. But running water has been an everyday part of civilized life for a very, very long time. Even out in modern day Sahara Desert, that's quite a ways from the ocean, so that would have kind of been a backwater, but they had running water. And one of the French explorers that discovered it said this, quote, "These hills are covered with countless numbers of the most interesting megalithic remains." So this is just out in the middle of Africa right now. Now, strangely enough, they know that it was built by Emperor Trajan in 100 AD and that it was a retirement colony for soldiers living nearby, but they don't know why they abandoned it, quote unquote. And you can see that this is a decent sized city. I mean, you see the amphitheater up there to the top right. Archaeologists don't seem to have a problem with people just up and abandoning their cities. I mean, for what reason would you just up and abandon your home today? Why is it any different? So Carthage, we've got one writer saying that Rome sacked it and destroyed every bit of it, just like the Spanish did in America. We've got this city, Timgad, out in the middle of the desert. Nobody's sure what happened, but it's all busted up into a million pieces and then buried in the sand. Now let's look at another city in Tunisia, right there where it says Nabil, ancient Umbia, it looks like on this map, but this is exactly where this following city that they're calling Neapolis is. Neapolis is just Greek, meaning new town, so there's a lot of Neapolises out there. This Neapolis is believed to have been submerged after a tsunami in the 4th century destroyed most of it, as recorded by Roman soldier and historian Ammian Marcellin. So another one guy has the story of this, and nobody else had even heard about it until it was discovered in 2017. And you can see here that half the city is out into the ocean. Very little has been recorded about the city because the citizens of Neapolis sided with Carthage rather than Rome during the Third Punic War. So Rome sacked and destroyed Carthage in 149 BC, and then nobody else heard about this city on the Mediterranean Sea where people pass by all the time for 600 years, and then it was destroyed by a tsunami. Okay. They say that these tanks that we're looking at here were made for using garum, which is like a fermented salty fish kind of condiment that the Romans used to use, and that probably is what they used it for. It makes sense. But about 100 of these were found underwater. So that just, imagine a whole factory production line making condiment off out in the ocean now because of a tsunami. I'm almost surprised they didn't say they lashed the city to their chariots and drug it out into the sea. Okay, I'm going to end back on Herodotus. And if the dating is anywhere near correct, then we're putting Herodotus at the beginning of the ancients' time era. And really, the only thing that we have to go on is that other ancient writers mentioned him at a later date. So we don't really know how far that is. But that would put Herodotus right after the Greek Dark Ages and the destruction of all the settlements and the collapse of socioeconomic systems. And that would be before all of the cities I've shown in this video were even built. So he had this to say about North Africa. He calls it Libya. Such are the tribes of wandering Libyans dwelling upon the seacoast. Above them inland is wild beast tract, and beyond that a ridge of sand reaching from Egyptian Thebes, which is modern day Cairo, the Nile Delta, to the Pillars of Hercules. Throughout this ridge, at a distance of about 10 days' journey from one another, heaps of salt in large lumps lie upon hills. At the top of every hill there gushes forth from the middle of the salt a stream of water, which is both cold and sweet. Around dwell men who are the last inhabitants of Libya on the side of the desert living. So he is clearly pointing out that after the Greek Dark Ages and something happened and all the societies collapsed, that these were the last inhabitants to live there, and the desert was encroaching on them. And I'm sure that some of you have noticed Atlantis there down to the bottom left. That is exactly where the Rishat structure is located in North Africa, but we'll talk about that a different time. I don't even see how it's a mystery. There's just so many things that say that that's Atlantis right there. But anyway, there's a lot to go over in Africa, so I'm going to have to just do multiple videos on it. So I'll catch you on the next one. Static out.